Okay, so here I'm going to do a guide on how to make a budget trap assassin, or this more commonly known as the Trapsin. The Trapsin is a rather unpopular class in the game, or at least it's not nearly as popular as the more common builds like the Cold Sorceress, the Lightning Sorceress, the Hammerden. But the Trapsin actually has a lot going for it. It has a lot of survivability because of its play style and because of its abilities, and it's also got a lot of damage from Lightning Sentry and Death Sentry, which has access to Corpse Explosion, which is kind of nice for AoE. So that's the main idea behind a Trapsin. The main strengths behind a Trapsin: it's got damage, got survivability. It's, I would argue, kind of fun to play, given its unique playstyle compared to other caster builds out there. Some of the drawbacks to look out for, though: the Lightning Sentry and the Death Sentry, when they fire lightning at monsters, you can't really control where they aim at. They'll aim at the closest monster that they can see. So if, for example, you wanted to target a monster like let's say Mephisto, but the traps are closer to another monster, let's say a council member, then well they'll target the council member instead of Mephisto, which can be a bit of a pain in the ass, right? So to kind of get around that, I'm just going to show you. You can see this Lightning Sentry. You can actually have up to 5 traps active at once. If you put down a sixth one, one of the traps will go out, right? So usually what you want to do, you don't want to stack them all over the place like I just did a couple seconds ago. You usually want to keep them all in one spot if possible. You want to put down usually 4 Lightning Sentries and 1 Death Sentry in one spot. And what this will do is if a monster passes by, it'll get hit by all of the traps at once. It won't just be one individual trap hitting one monster and another individual trap hitting another monster. It'll just all fire at one monster, which is what you want. It'll do the most amount of damage, and it'll kill a monster quickly, or more quickly than if you were to split all of the traps apart. And then, well, the faster you can get at least one monster killed, then you can get Death Sentry's Corpse Explosion to detonate that corpse, and it'll do a good amount of damage to everything around whatever died. So that's just the general idea behind this build. And yeah, so of course, in terms of, oh, one other thing. This build assumes that you've done all of the skill quests, that your goal is to make an MFing trap assassin. Like for Magic Find, it's not a playthrough, or it's not going to be a Trapsin that's meant to go through the game, or you're not meant to walk through it. It's not meant for PvP. Yeah, no, and by the way, it's probably not meant for hardcore either. I wouldn't recommend playing the way that I will be playing if you were to play in hardcore, although you probably could tweak up the playstyle a little bit if you wanted to play hardcore, and probably make it work, because you've got some nice abilities like Cloak of Shadows, Fade, and of course the traps shoot from long range, which makes it much easier to stay alive in Hell difficulty, of course, on hardcore mode. So as you can see, I'm maxing out Lightning Sentry and Death Sentry first because they're going to be my main hard hitters. And of course, Lightning Sentry does get synergies from Shockweb, Charge Bolts, and Death Sentry. So then I'll be maxing out Shockweb, and then that's going to be followed by Charge Bolt Sentry because they're both synergies. But of course, Charge Bolts, you'll never really be using a Charge Bolt Sentry since it pales in comparison in terms of damage to the Lightning Sentry. Whereas with Shockweb, you can throw this if you want to add some extra damage to your traps as well. Like if you're putting down your Lightning Sentry and you want your assassin to do damage too, or some more damage, you can throw Shockweb at them on top of these traps. So, yeah, you can put 20 points in Death Sentry, 20 points in Lightning Sentry, 20 points in Shockweb. If I had more points, I'd max out Charge Bolts, and then I'd probably max out Fire Blast, because Fire Blast, if you max out Fire Blast, you can see that it gets synergies from all of these traps too, right? You can see that it gets synergies from all of these 4 traps, which means that when this is maxed out, it'll do a lot. It'll do enough damage that you can deal with lightning immune monsters using Fire Blast, assuming that Lightning Sentry can't deal with them, or for whatever reason Death Sentry can't deal with them. But my character's not high enough levels, so I'm going to stick with this for now in the trap section, and then in the Shadow Disciplines, we're going to want to have 1 point in a Claw Mastery and Psychic Hammer as prereqs. For Cloak of Shadows, Weapon Block, Burst of Speed, and Fade. Burst of Speed, pretty straightforward ability, increases your movement speed, which is useful. Obviously, when you're in town, you want to be able to run fast so that you could finish your MF runs more quickly, and it's also useful because it adds attack speed. Your traps, I should point out, are based, or the speed at which your traps come down are based off of your attack speed and not your faster cast rate. This is important to know because we'll be taking advantage of this later. You don't need something like Mage Fists or FCR Rings, unlike if you were playing as a Hammerdin or some other caster build. You need IAS to put down your traps, and that comes from Burst of Speed. Fade. Fade increases your resistances by a set amount that it says on the skill itself. It also has the hidden bonus of adding resistances to physical, or your, well, physical resistance. So if you have like a level 15 Fade, you would have 15% damage reduction because Fade adds physical resistance based on how many points or what skill level it is. So level 1 Fade will increase physical resistance by 1. If I had a level 15 Fade, increase physical resistance by 15, by 20 if it were level 20, and so on. Weapon Block and Cloak of Shadows. Well, Weapon Block is useful if you have 2 claws, which we will be using in our build. Of course, Weapon Block, unlike regular blocking, it works a little bit differently. It can block more sources of damage, like, for example, if it can actually block hammers or blessed hammers from Hammerdins, but unfortunately the drawback with Weapon Block is that you can't use this while your character is walking or running. So if your character is on the move, then you can't actually have Weapon Block, but it's still useful if you're standing still or if you're laying down your traps and yada yada. Or teleporting. Cloak of Shadows, well, Cloak of Shadows is another really interesting ability. This ability will actually keep you alive. When you see a group of monsters, if you activate this, it reduces the amount of vision they have, so they can't actually see you. Well, yeah, it's harder for them to see you. So if you go up against Pindleskin, as I'll show you in a second, and you Cloak of Shadows and you lay down your traps, the traps will just fire at the monsters and they'll just stand there and they'll look around like complete dumbasses, and it's great. So I'll show you how that works in a second, but first I'm going to dump 150 points into Vitality. The reason being that it's a safe bet to assume that I'll have about 150 points into Vitality. I'm not going to put all my points just yet because, as you can see, I don't have any equipment on my character. And so I don't actually know how many points I need into Strength and Dexterity to have all of my equipment, or so that I can wear my equipment. And besides that, Dexterity normally would be good for increasing your chance to block, but your chance to block isn't affected, or your claw blocks. This claw block's ability, or weapon block, is not affected by your dexterity. It relies entirely on how many points you put into this skill, or how many points it gets from whatever items you have on at the time. So, as you can see, 150 points of vitality, have a good bit of health, so I won't outright die if I get attacked by certain monsters. I'll save my remaining points for later when I put more points into strength and dexterity so I can wear my gear. And then, of course, the remaining points later on will go into vitality. But first, we're going to go into fight Pindle. I'm going to step right here. I'm going to activate Cloak of Shadows. And I actually kind of messed that up. Hold on. Let me try that again. Sorry. So, there's a certain radius on this Cloak of Shadows. It affects 20 yards. So you have to be relatively close to the monsters to actually activate the Cloak of Shadows. So here, I see them. I'm going to activate Cloak of Shadows, and you can see that they're just wandering around aimlessly now. They have, except for Pindleskin, of course, because Pindleskin is a unique monster, so I don't think he's as affected by these other monsters. I'm just going to activate Cloak of Shadows again. So you can see that that's just kind of the general idea of how the build works. or how the playstyle is supposed to be. I chose to do Hell Pindle first to kind of show you that you can actually kill monsters in Hell mode, even with a naked Trapsin. So if you can get more gear on this character, then it's even better, of course, right? So, as you can see here, I do have a bit of gold from farming Pendle Skin, so now I can actually go to Trasy. So this is how I'm actually going to start off by gearing up. Normally what I'd recommend, instead of farming Pendle, I would normally recommend farming Nightmare Eldritch to get some gold, because this is how I gear up my character, or how I'll be gearing up my character, or gearing up my assassin on a budget, right? I'm actually going to be using Charcy, or I'm going to be using the shops, or the vendors, to my advantage, and I'm going to be buying magical items to gear up my character properly. So this is how I'm going to go about doing it. It doesn't really matter. And I'm looking for a number of different things, right? I'm looking for gloves, I'm looking for a decent belt, and I'm looking for faster run walk boots. And here, let me show you what I would define as decent here. So as you can see here, no, these are really nice boots. Even if they were just 40 faster run walk, that would be pretty good. But they come with 36 lightning resist on top of 40 fast run walk. So it's safe to say that this is going to be the set of boots that I'm going to be wearing. I'm going to throw those on. Those greatly increase my lightning resist. Let's see, what else can I find here? Plus dexterity, that can be useful. Yeah, that's pretty decent, because it'll save me some points in dexterity for later when I actually wear claws, but I'll probably find something better in a little bit. I'm looking for gloves and a belt that increase resistances or increase health. As you can see, still nothing. And I'm going to keep at it again. And I'm not going to keep doing this for very much longer. I'm just trying to show you what the process of finding the items would be, right? So you'd basically be checking Nightmare Charcy, because she can give you these magic gloves, magic belt, and magic boots. And then eventually you'll find something like this, right? You'll find a belt of the squid, or belt of the whale or something. And I chose the belt of the squid instead of light belt, because light belt comes with only 4x2 potion slots. But with the belt here, or belt of the squid, comes with 3x2 and 3x4, and it also comes with 73 life. Here we go. So here's something interesting that you should note. As I mentioned earlier, the traps, the speed at which you put them down is based off of your increased attack speed, so you're going to want to look for IAS gloves. They don't have to be like there's some Zon builds out there that use like +3 javelin and spear skills with +20 IAS or whatever. No, we don't care about that. We just care about a pair of gloves with increased attack speed. We need these to lay down our traps a little bit more quickly. And we could use the belt, one for the potion slots, and also because it gives a bonus to survivability, in this case health. So now comes the hard labor. Where are we going to get the rest of the items? Well, you can get... Okay, so you're going to need a stealth armor, of course, Taloned F, right? And you're going to get the Taloned F from farming normal Countess, and it shouldn't take you that long. Probably within 10 runs or so, you should be able to get a Taloned F from Countess. And yeah, eventually you'll also need to get an armor once you get the Taloned F. Once again, normal Charcy will provide that. The items that the vendors sell differs from difficulty to difficulty, of course. So I'm not going to get into the specifics exactly, but just know that if you're looking for a 2-socket armor, like some random shitty 2-socket armor that any character can wear, then definitely normal will be the place to do it, right? And then eventually you'll keep doing this over and over and over again until you get like a leather armor with 2 sockets, and you get a skull cap or some other headgear with 2 sockets, and then you'll... I was talking about the stealth earlier. So the stealth Tal Eth comes from normal Countess, and if you're looking for the Ort and the Soul Rune, those will probably come from Nightmare Countess. You'll farm Nightmare Countess over and over, and hopefully within 15 to 20 runs of that, of doing Nightmare Countess, you will get your hands on an Ort and a Soul Rune, and then you'll have your character decked out here, at least their headgear and their armor. Ort Soul and Tal Eth, right? And then that leaves you with looking for the 2 rings, and the magic amulet, and the 2 claws, or a weapon shield. And in our case, we're going to go with 2 claws. And where you can get the rings, it's pretty interesting. You can, once you clear the Cain quest, right, search for Cain, you can do this in all 3 difficulties, normal, nightmare, and hell, although I'll probably assume that you'll only be able to do it for normal and nightmare, because your character is not fully geared yet. You can talk to Kara, and she'll give you a magic ring, and sometimes the magic ring turns out to be kind of useful. Usually it won't be that useful, right? Usually it's going to be something shitty like this one, 32 to attack rating. You don't need that at all, right? But sometimes it'll be like resistances, and that's kind of handy. And then there's another place you can get a ring, and that's normal Act 3, or sorry, that's Act 3, Quest 2, Blade of the Old Religion. You have to go to Flare Jungle, and then you have to get this thing called the Gidbin. You can do this once again in normal and nightmare, as well as hell. I'm going to assume that you're not going to do it in hell. And you just return it to Ormus, and then he'll give you a magic ring. Here, this one's a piece of shit ring, but sometimes it'll have like +5 strength, +20 to like light res, and other bonuses like that, right? So that's how you start off by getting like random shit rings just from doing those quests. But let's say that these rings were completely shitty, like this iron ring, 32 to attack rating. We don't really need that. Well, one little trick you can use to actually make this ring into something useful: you cube this magic ring with a perfect sapphire and a thawing potion, and you can make a cold resist ring. Did you see that? That's a cube recipe, and you can do this also for a light res ring, a fire res ring, and a poison res ring. But you need the corresponding cube recipe. So in the case of a light res ring, you'd need a rejuve potion, and with the fire res ring, you'd probably need an exploding potion, which I don't have right now, but that's what you would do, right? So as you can see, I have my character close to fully geared up. An amulet. Where can you get an amulet? Well, you can buy some random shitty amulet from Geed, or you can gamble one from him for like 63,000 gold. Of course, the amulet you'll probably get won't be all that useful, but if you were to, like, for example, cube that with one of every type of gem, or one of every type of perfect gem excluding a perfect skull, you could get a prismatic amulet, or an amulet with up to 20 resistances. I think it's like 10 to 20 or 15 to 20 or some shit like that. And you can just wear that, and the resistances, of course, come in handy or will come in handy for later when you go do your farming in various different places. And that's just how you get everything leading up to the 2 claws. Now the 2 claws, this is going to be a little fun little mini game for you. This is how you get the 2 claws. You have 2 choices. You can either talk to... Oh, wait. Hold on. You can either talk to Anya after freeing her, because I mentioned earlier that I'm assuming that you've done the Anya quest, right? So if you've rescued Anya and you talk to her, she'll give you a class-specific item, and sometimes the class-specific item she'll give you will be a claw with like +1 to assassin skills. But let's say that Anya's a hoe and she decides not to give you such a claw. Well, you can actually still use her. You can talk to her in hell mode. You can trade with her, and you can look for claws that have +1 to assassin skills, or +2 to assassin skill. Well, there's a lot of different types of claws you can get, right? You're looking for ones with + to assassin skills, + to traps, or + to lightning sentry, right? Those are the big ones that you're looking for, and you also preferably want them to be +3 if possible. Okay, so here you go. You can see I'm a little bit too broke to afford them right now, but if I did have enough gold, I could get these +1 to assassin skills. It doesn't really matter what other random shitty mods they have, like +6 min damage. We don't care about that. But yeah, ideally you would want claws with like +2 to assassin skills, +3 to lightning sentry, or like yeah, some shit like that. But those are really rare. Those are like close to GG claws, and those will take you a long, long time to find. So let's just be realistic and assume that no, you don't have access to those types of claws. All right. Well, if you don't have access to those kinds of claws, and I'm just gonna there we go. You don't have access to those types of claws. Just settle for like +1 or probably +2 if possible to assassin skills, or like if you could get like a +2 to lightning sentry or +3 to lightning sentry. Just anything that will boost the damage on your lightning sentry is what you're looking for. That's really, really useful, right? And once you have this build set up, I just want to show you, just kind of want to demonstrate how you can use it, right? Oh, and the rest of the points, of course, into Vitality. Okay, so I kind of botched this a little bit. I was supposed to run in here in Cloak of Shadows, but you can see, like, these traps just shit on the monsters. Boom. Done. That's it. Right? That's how you would do Hell Pendle Run. You run in, you drop your traps, you Cloak of Shadows, and then they're dead. I'll talk about what places you can farm with this build a little bit later, but yeah, that's just the gist of it, right? Oh, and I don't have mana. Just Cloak of Shadows, and that's it. Now the traps will do their thing. You can see, dead, done. Quick, clean. You don't need GG gear to kill off monsters in Hell. Not even in Hell Act 5, but you would struggle probably trying to do like Chaos Sanctuary. So, talk more about that. That's not going to be the scope of this guide. I'm probably going to show you how to do pits with this Trapsin though. But anyway. I'm not done with items just yet. There is one last set of items that you should be looking out for, and that's going to be your switch, right? You can see here I have on switch duplicates of the claws that I'm already using. We don't care about that right now. There's 3 possibilities that you can have for, or at least I'm going to propose 3 possibilities that you can have on switch. You can either have a lower resist wand, a teleport staff, or a harmony bow. And these are all budget options, of course. You can actually buy most of these from the you could buy the lower res wand and the teleport staff from vendors. Like if you were to go to Act 2, you can see Drognin right here. You could trade with them. You could like check out these staffs, and maybe if you can see here, like this one has, which one was it? Okay, this one's got like lightning. Imagine if that one had like plus a teleport. Well, okay, so it's not a teleport staff though, so you just run out and then you just check again. You can see no teleport staff here, but yeah, I mean that's how you would try to shop for a teleport staff. The teleport staff is useful for if you want to do areas that are tightly confined, like if you were to try and farm, oh I don't know, if you were to for whatever reason be in Chaos Sanctuary and you wanted to like hop over these like pits of lava, you can just teleport over with a teleport staff, and you don't actually have to run through all those monsters. So that would be one really nice use of a teleport staff. If you wanted to try and take down bosses, like let's say you were trying to farm Mephisto or Andariel or something, then well that's where the lower resist wand comes in handy, and there's a lot of different places you can get that too. One place would be like Mala. You can actually talk to Mala, and she sells wands herself, and then sometimes those wands will spawn in with lower resist. I think even Drognin, the guy I was talking to earlier, or the merchant I was talking to earlier, also sells lower resist wands. Once again, a lower resist wand, I don't really think I need to get into how to really use that. You just take this lower resist wand, you just like cast lower resist on a boss that you want to hit with your traps for much harder, and then you just shit on them with your traps. That's basically it. And then lastly, the Harmony Bow. And the Harmony Bow is awesome because it gives the Vigor aura. So you can see, if I run with this bow, I run like a bullet, right? I run with a bow, with Burst of Speed, and with these faster run walk boots and stealth. I'd come in here to the Neolithac Temple in no time, and I just lay down my traps and just do my thing, right? And of course, I would make sure that if I had my Harmony Bow coming into Neolithac's Temple, that I would take it off by the time, or like I would switch over to my Claws with +1 Assassin skills before I start laying down my traps, right? So that's another really awesome option if you want to have a decent like switch, right? Or decent weapon switch. So choose between any of these. The problem with this Harmony Bow, though, of course, is that you do need a co-rune for it. You actually need a co-rune, and you need a 4-socket bow. The 4-socket bow isn't that hard to find, although I don't think you could shop it. Don't quote me on that. But the co-rune is a little bit more difficult to find, and I'm going to talk about how to potentially find that in a moment. Actually, I'll talk about it right now, in fact. So, where can you get a co-rune, right? Maybe you'll get lucky and find it from farming Pindleskin or some other random area, like pits or some shit. But one other possibility, one other alternative for finding a co-rune, and even other useful runes for that matter, is actually by clearing out your Hellforges, okay? If you go and clear out your Hellforges, there's a chance that you can get some really useful runes for your Trapsin, because these items that I'm showing you right here are just the baseline. But if you can get a co-rune from Nightmare Forge, because Nightmare Forge can drop you up to an rune, if I'm not mistaken. I think it can drop up to an which means that Co is a possibility, Lem is a possibility, Paul and are all 4 of them are possibilities. So if you get a Co rune, you can make a Harmony Bow. If you get a Lem rune, then you can make a Treachery, right? I'm going to talk about that in a second, but yeah, I'm just trying to point out that this, if you do get a Co rune, that's how you can get your Harmony Bow or whatever. So let's say you don't get a co-rune. Let's say you get a Lem rune instead. Let's say you get super lucky and you get like a Lem rune. You can make a Treachery, okay? A Treachery. +2 Assassin skills, +45 IAS, faster hit recovery, cold res. And you can even get the 3-socket ring mail from Farah. Okay, maybe not in Nightmare, but normal mode Farah will sell you 3-socket armors, and ideally you'd want a 3-socket breastplate because ring mails will slow you down. But if you can get a Shale, a Thulin, or sorry, if you can get a Lem rune from your Nightmare Forge, or even your Hell Forge, then you can make this Treachery, and it'll boost your damage by quite a bit because of the +2 to Assassin kills, and it'll increase your ability to lay down traps, the speed at which you lay down traps, which is just awesome all around. And that's not even considering its other bonuses, right? Shale and Thul are easy to come by runes. You could easily farm Countess and get these. Doesn't really matter. But let's say you don't get a Lem rune. Let's say you get like a Paul or an from Nightmare Forge, or maybe you get like a Mal, an Ist, or a Gull from Hellforge. Well, or Hellmode's Hellforge. Well, the thing with and Paul is that you can actually just trade these for a Lem rune if you're playing online, right? If you're playing Untwinked, then this isn't a possibility. But if you are playing online and you get like an rune from Forge, you can easily trade that in for a Lem rune. You would lose out on a bit of currency for that, like you'd be getting ripped off a little bit. But if you could make your Treachery more quickly, that is awesome. You don't need an rune, but you definitely could use a Treachery for sure, right? But if you were to get like an Ist or a Gull from your Hellmode Hellforge, then you could use that not to trade it in for a Treachery, but you could use that to get like an Assassin Torch, maybe. If you're lucky, somebody would be willing to sell an Assassin Torch to you for cheap. Or at least maybe they wouldn't consider it cheap because... Or maybe they would consider it cheap because no one really uses... Or very fewer people use Assassin than the other builds, right? Like, Paladin Torches and Sword Torches go for the most... Trapsin is not as common, so you might be lucky enough to snag even like a low Assassin Torch. Doesn't really matter. You just want the +3 Assassin skills. That's what's most important in that build. So I know it's a lot to take in. I'm saying a lot, but I'm really trying to get at different strategies you can use to deck out your Assassin day 2, day 3 of ladder. Like, you're not going to have Enigma or Infinity, but hey, this is a really quick hack for getting your character up and running without needing tons of high runes and shit, right? So yeah, just viable places to MF now. That's probably the last thing I wanted to talk about, because I've talked about the gear, even, or that includes like what you'd have on Switch and also where to find them. But I've talked about the pros and cons of the build. I've talked about where to put your stat points, where to put your skill points. Now the last bit of information I want to talk about would probably be where you can farm. And of course, these traps do lightning damage. And so you don't really want to go to places with lots of lightning immunes, but you can farm just about anywhere else with them. Probably the two places where you could farm pretty easily, or like a couple routes you could take. You could farm Eldritch, of course, right? You can see these monsters are dying easy peasy, no problem. Um, Eldritch here is not coming forward for whatever reason. Okay, now he is. Okay. So you see there, though, that cold enchanted, you really got to look out for that. The thing about this build, or one of the big drawbacks, or another weakness of it, once again, you have low resistances. You can kind of make up for this by using Fade. But I usually prefer Burst of Speed because most of the monsters that you deal with don't actually have elemental-based damage, right? Most of them do physical damage. So I usually stick to Burst of Speed. So anyway, one route you could take, you could do Eldritch, and then you could come here to Neilfax's Temple, and then you could just lay down your traps. Okay, so of course I've positioned it quite nicely so that these pillars are in the way. Yeah, run in, just waltz in here, farm Pindle Skin, and bam, run's done. And he even drops some Runic Talons. And they're playing Runic Talons with nothing of value, so. So that's one way you could go about farming with this character. You could farm Pindle Skin and you could farm Eldritch. Another area that I would say that you could consider farming would be the Pits. The Pits is a level 85 area, so it can drop just about any item in the game. And the likelihood of the monsters actually dropping those items is quite similar to... is actually quite similar to the likelihood of monsters in Chaos Sanctuary dropping the same items, so... yeah, Pits is a pretty nice place to be. Of course, the monsters in Pits are also squishier because it is Act 2, right? Or, sorry, no, it's Act 1. So yeah, they have a lot less health, which is quite handy, right? Makes it much easier for your traps to kill them. And I actually don't know where I'm going here. Okay, of course. So yeah, now that we're in the pits, I would probably activate Fade here. Once again, as I pointed out earlier, you can see the difference in cast speed, though, with my traps when I have Burst of Speed and without Burst of Speed, right? Like, if I have Fade active, my resistances go up, but my ability to cast traps goes down, and my run speed goes down, too. It's probably the best practice, I'd say. Best practice, I'd say, if you are trying to farm pits, just have Burst of Speed ready, but then put down your traps like one screen away. Right, put down your traps one screen away from the monsters once you know where they are. And then activate Cloak of Shadows so they can't chase after you, which is basically what I've been doing. So you see that there's like these skeletons coming here. Okay, I already have my traps here, so I can't really show it, but... Okay. Trying to keep my distance from this. Okay. So yeah, let's find another pack of monsters now. All right, so here's a bunch. Is there anybody here? No, there isn't. So it's just a pretty straight one way. All right, so you got a lot of monsters hanging out here. So now I'm just gonna put down 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, and I'm gonna activate Cloak of Shadows, and then you can see these monsters will keep chasing after me. Well, these ones didn't make it, but if they were able to make it, then they wouldn't have actually been able to hit me, because they wouldn't have been able to find me. So let's try this one more time. Okay, so big group of monsters. Cloak of Shadows, run away, 3, 4, and then 5. Put down my Death Sentry there. You can see all the monsters are still just hanging out. They're trying to trying to look for me, and then the Death Sentry. Do you see the range on that? The Death Sentry is sitting there blowing up those corpses, and the trap is all the way down here while the monsters are all the way up there. Pretty awesome, safe build, really. Not a cookie cutter build like the Lightning Sorceress or the Hammerden or whatever, but still very effective, and I would argue very fun. I actually don't have... There we go. I don't have any mana potions. I forgot to pick up a few of those. Just stand here, let them do their thing. I don't have Cloak of Shadows active, I'll just activate it now. Just chill here. They're not even trying to dodge it. That's how nice this is. So yeah, that's basically it. Oh, and the best part about farming in pits too. Notice that when I activate Cloak of Shadows, it doesn't affect my visibility either, right? It affects all their visibilities. It just doesn't it doesn't affect mine though, because well, I'm in because of the area that I'm in. If I were out in the open though, if I were somewhere else, like earlier you saw, I think I used it in like Outer Cloister or the Monastery, then yeah, Cloak of Shadows will also obscure my view, but here that's not a big problem at all. And that's all there is to it, really. I don't think there's much else I want to get at. You can see I can farm pits quite nicely here with this build. It's got a good amount of survivability from its different abilities. It's got a lot of damage, right? I'm not even using Treachery here, but if you were to get a Treachery, you'd be doing even more damage. I don't know. All around, it's a pretty fun build. Hope you guys got something. Oh, and even look at this. This is 3-socket Mage Plate. You could totally build the Treachery in here, even. Right, so yeah, that's pretty much all I want to say for this build. Hope you guys found this build useful, and well, I guess I'll see you around. So this is D2D2 signing out.